Pasta, can you explain what you mean by it being a mathematical impossibility?
Those numbers that came out in the still of the night, mathematically impossible. We talked about this before. They like to use the term anomaly, but I like to say it's that Dumb and Dumber kind of thing. Remember the scene where Lloyd Christmas talks to Mary Swanson and say, "What's the chances of me and you? 1 in 10, 1 in 100, 1 in a million?" She goes, "It's 1 in 100, 1 in a million." So the Democrats are saying, so you're still saying there's a chance. No, it was mathematically impossible. Have you ever seen an election on MSNBC, CNN, when they call the results with 60% of the vote in? They do it all the time. With 60% of the vote in, we call it for Joe Biden. Why? Because math is involved when it comes to the elections. They know that the one candidate can't catch the other candidate because the sample size that come in, we just ignored that in 2020, and they let it go into the still of the night. Why? They had all these mail-in ballots with ballot harvesting, whatnot, no chain of custody, no nothing, and they were able to swing the election. It was as fake as could be.
All right, I mean, if you're clapping, you're an idiot. I mean, I'm sorry, but like, the reality is there's no, what do you mean? You're an idiot. You're an idiot and you're un-American. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I remember when you guys were saying after the last election, you know what we would do if we lose? We would go to work the next day. That's what you guys said, and here you are 4 years later crying about the fact that in every single state there was a top-down order to rig the election that there's no camera footage of, there's no video footage of, there's not a single person reporting this, there's not a single person that's like leaking anything, there's not a single command, there's not a single email, there's not a single screenshot, there's not a single photograph, there's nothing. The only thing you had were the same 2 videos that Donald Trump was obsessing over in that phone call with Raffensperger, saying that the lady was running the same ballots 3 times. They got shot down in court. They got shot down in the media like 20 times. You have the same stupid stories. But listen, hey, if you think
admitted it was wrong, that the audit was wrong. Raffensperger admitted that there was.
If you think. No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
He didn't. If you think the election is rigged, I agree with you. Don't vote. Don't waste your time. Why would you waste your time voting in a rigged election? I think if you support Donald Trump, don't vote for him, okay? Because they're going to toss your vote anyway, I guess. So.
Destiny, what do you think about the pulse of the American people? Whether it doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. Do you think that people in general are losing faith in our electoral process, and is that a problem?
I think people lack faith. Yeah, I think it is a problem, but the reality is it's hard to get that faith back when so many in the media are poised against it. If Donald Trump loses the election, there's not a single person that's going to accept that that's in any way like congruent with reality. It can't happen. So, I mean, how do you operate in an environment where there's only one outcome that you can accept and the other outcome means that it's rigged? I don't know how you operate in that environment.
Okay, so I've observed elections in 6 international Latin American countries, right? You have to have a system that is transparent, has a chain of custody out there, so there's no question whatsoever. We're supposed to be the beacon of democracy out there, right? So we should have the soundest system out there. The biggest lie out there right now is that we can't have fair, transparent elections, which is in the purview of the public, that's publicly verifiable, that we can do it in one day and get results that night. It's the biggest gig out there. I just want to throw this really quickly before I pass this on. I want to throw some numbers out there just to show you when it comes to, because I brought my stats, right? When it comes to Georgia, 12,000 votes with the difference between Trump and Biden. 148,000 ballots appear to have been marked by a machine. There were 3 witnesses that signed an affidavit that talked about this during the recount because you couldn't go out and protest the ballot itself. You had to recount it. So they had all these inaccuracies all over the place. 147,000 mail-in ballots didn't go through some signature matching. That's what they do. This is where the real cancer is these mail-in ballots, because you don't know where they're coming from. Do you even know who makes the ballots in your state and your county? I bet you don't. I will bet $1 million that you don't know who makes your ballots out there. And guess what? Whoever makes your ballots, whoever signs the contract for that ballot, that's who runs that ballot company. In the case of Raffensperger, he signed the contract. That's who the ballot company works for, so they can print ballots, make ballots, distribute ballots, and with ballot harvesting legal in 27 states, they can stuff the ballot box, and that's exactly what they did.
Why is it that... Okay, let's assume that's true. Why did every single Republican ally to Trump disagree, including his own attorney general, including Raffensperger, including everybody else who stood to gain?
That's a straw man argument. What does that mean? Have to do with the system itself?
Because it's interesting that not a single person around Trump, all who ubiquitously shun this man as a loser, if not for nothing else, right? Who all says that he lied about the election. None of them agree with any of the claims that he's put forth. He didn't have the defense of his own Department of Justice, of his own intelligence agencies that he nominates the heads of his own party, of his own campaign, of his own inner council, of his own White House staff. There is not a single person that agrees with this. Just the fans that he has out in the crowd. So how do you explain that? Are they all part of the conspiracy?
Dude, Here's the thing, and I said this before, this isn't about Democrat versus Republican, this is top versus down, this is the establishment versus everybody. Okay, Joe Biden won the top of the ticket, but the Republicans got the coattails. They were in it. People like Lindsey Graham, people like freaking, what's his name, Mitch McConnell, the Turtle. These guys were all in it. They were safe because the system that's in play. It's not left versus right. It's top versus bottom.
Okay,
it's
if you agree with that,
people.
that's fine. You agree with that. You're not supporting Trump then, right? Because apparently every single person
Did I
he
say I was
surrounded
supporting
himself
Trump?
with. Oh, so this is a hallway of non-Trump supporters then.
What do they got to do with me? I'm not supporting Donald Trump, man. I mean, if I had a gun to my head and I had to vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump, yeah, I'd vote for Donald Trump every single day of the week. But I don't have those options right now. But,
if there are people that think that the entire deep state, the entire thing is rigged against every leader, then why would you support Donald Trump if he was the guy nominating all these people that are the heads of all these agencies that are apparently all
there's
part
other
of the deep
issues
state?
that Donald Trump that I don't agree with on heavily, and especially his treatment in Latin America about labeling Cuba a state sponsor of terror, about Operation Warp Speed. There's many reasons not to vote for Donald Trump. It's not just because there's one reason that makes me go and say I have to vote for Donald Trump because he got cheated. He did get cheated, and that's the fact.
Well, and then wait, I'm just curious. What is the single strongest piece of evidence you have that there was like outcome determinative voter fraud or outcome determinative election fraud?
I never said voter fraud. I said election fraud.
What is the strongest piece of evidence for that?
It was mathematically impossible.
What do you mean by mathematically impossible?
It was mathematically impossible for those numbers to come in the middle of the night. It was mathematically
can you explain
impossible.
Why,
they said anomalies here, anomalies there, anomalies here.
No, they didn't. No one said anomalies, sir.
Dude,
well, maybe on the conservative media that you
was
watched, they didn't. No, they didn't. In fact, if you watch the media beforehand, literally Bernie Sanders, I think 2 weeks earlier, is giving an interview where he says, well, in the middle of the night, we might see something strange. We might see Pennsylvania flip. We might see these states flip. He called like 4 of the states that ended up flipping overnight. Not only did Bernie Sanders say that literally ahead of time, not only was that called ahead of time, there was a reason why Donald Trump was literally trying to end the election in the middle of the night, because he knew what it was going to look like when those mail-in ballots came in, and he'd been telling people not to vote on mail-in ballots for the prior year. How is it so surprising?
Because they knew that the mail-in ballots, and I said this months before the elections, the Democrats or the establishment is going to steal the elections through the mail-in system. They illegally changed laws. Jimmy Carter and James Baker in a bipartisan conference this said, plain and simple, the area easiest for fraud is in mail-in ballots. A lot of people believe that mail-in ballots have always swayed election, and we have now ridiculousness. And what happened when it came with the COVID, some of the laws that came into place because of emergency, because they used the COVID to thwart the election, a lot of those rules now and those laws are now permanent in states like Nevada, in Arizona, in Wisconsin. So we're going to see more of the same next time out there. We don't have a fair system.
It's up to the states to run their elections. If you want to change the laws in the states, and you get your state legislature to change it.
But the state legislation didn't change the laws. Election officials change the laws. Secretary of State changed the laws.
Election officials cannot change laws. It's up to your state legislative bodies to do it.
Voter fraud is an individual committing a crime, an election crime, whatnot. Election fraud is an entity, like a body. Like this was stolen by an entity of sorts because they were able to stuff thousands and thousands of ballots to change the election. Millions and millions of ballots in 6 different counties. That's all you have to do is pick out 6 different counties to steal the election. That's how you can pull this thing off. And they pick up these populist counties, these Democrat-leaning counties, and that's where they won. So
wait, does it bother you that there are millions of these ballots that were stuffed, I guess, and there wasn't any evidence of any of this?
Because we don't have a proper audit system to do so, Destiny.
So the thousands of people that were involved in this process...
We cannot properly audit elections.
Okay, well, ignore the fact that all of the states that audited disagree with you, apparently. But all of the thousands of people involved in this rigging,
what's the audit process? Name me one audit process and one election.
I know the audit process.
And I know it's not an audit. It's a recount. They're recounting fake ballots once again. It's not an audit. We don't have a real audit system. And the proprietary software is just that. Proprietary. You're not allowed to look at it. It's a black box voting system. We can't see how and who are counting a vote.
And it fills in a box. I can't imagine the code is that complicated.
You can't look at the code. You're not allowed to look at it. They can vote flip all the time. We talked about this with Benny Smithen.
Look, we do use proprietary software, but to his point, he said it's legal to ballot harvest in 27 states. So you're like, is there any evidence for this? It's in the law. It says you can do this. This is something that they did in California.
But the ballot harvesting claims are not that you're allowed to go to a senior.
I don't hear him saying like Dinesh D'Souza, there's 2,000 mules or whatever. I don't know how.
Yeah, he's saying there are millions of fake ballot stuff. Not that people are going to a nursing home and collecting people's ballots.
He's referring to policy in terms of mail-in voting, which which again is banned.
But he's also
in
referring
modern-
that he thinks that last year millions of fake ballots were filled out.
I'll let him speak for himself.
Fraudulent ballots, okay? Fraudulent ballots, okay? They were filled out and they were stuffed. And the whole nursing home situation in Florida has been an area where they've been able to
Wait, I'm
cheat
curious,
elections all the
because you
time.
asked a question kind of, does anybody else up here think that like foreign operators on our social media are an issue relating to our like media environment?
I don't. I think it's more the CIA.
That's wild. Okay.
I mean, I think there are foreign powers that want to influence our election.
And want to, but they don't.
Well, I'm
They
sure
don't operate at all
I'm sure
online
they-
on this?
I'm sure.
Where's your evidence of that?
No, I'm sure.
Where's I mean, you can look at the Mueller indictments, and you can look at how they completely laid out how the Internet Research Agency was operating from. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't like evidence. I'm sorry. I'll wait for that to show up on a Tim Pool podcast, and then you'll believe it. Jesus Christ. My God. You motherfuckers will cite Russia Today and believe it over your own intelligence agencies. It's so wild.
By the way,
Why do you live here?
Jesus. It was the memes that Russian social media company released. It was the Bernie Sanders meme right there. That's what made everybody go and not vote for Donald Trump. That was the reason why.
Yeah, but the New York Post, the crack hunter laptop muted on Twitter for 24 hours was definitely election throwing.
They
Okay.
withheld information.
Yeah.
They swayed the public, and there was a lot of people when they asked them, would that have changed your vote? And they said yes.
No, it was also slowed down.